can really recommend being a foster carer for Notts County Council. There's always someone walking the journey alongside you.
Okay, I can confirm we're live, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jo. Could I ask you now, please, to introduce the rest of the people on the meeting today, Jo?
Thank you. As well as the leader, the other members present are Councillors Adair, Barnfather, Butler, Cotty, Fole, Garner, Guilfoyle, Harper, Councillor Roger Jackson, who's substituting for Councillor Richard Jackson today, and also Councillors Knight, Lawton, Owen, Peck, Pringle, Rhodes and Vice.
Thank you.
As well as myself, we also have the following officers who are present. We have the Chief Executive, Anthony May, the Monitoring Officer, Marjorie Toward, the Chief Finance Officer, Nigel Stevenson, Service Director, Matthew Neal, Group Managers, Neil Gamble and Kaj Gatora, and I believe that should be all of us present.
Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda then is the minutes of the last meeting. You've all had a copy of them. Are they a true and a correct record? I'll take silence as assention. Thank you very much. Item 2 then is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
We do, Leader. Good morning, colleagues. We have apologies from Councillor Richard Jackson, who has been substituted by Councillor Roger Jackson. We've also received apologies for absence from Councillor Madden and Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. Richard Jackson, of course, is on the County Council business, isn't he, Chief Executive?
He is indeed, Chair. Yep.
And are there any declarations of interest, please? Either do members present have any disposable pecuniary interest to declare, and do members present have any private interest to declare? No. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on now to then agenda item 4, which is the County Council's approach to the prevention of modern slavery. The report outlines the Council's approach to complying with the Modern Slavery Act, and we're detailing the Council's modern slavery and human trafficking statement, the staff training, due diligence through our procurement process, and robust contract management approach. Though the detail in the report is evidence that the Council's contract managers have knowledge of and requirements of regarding modern slavery, and processes are put in place to provide assurances. To enhance our contract management process against modern slavery, it is proposed to undertake a series of actions to ensure consistency in the Council's approach. These will be led through the Council's Contract Management Project Group as detailed in the report. And I'm sure members know how valuable this work is, and I formally move the recommendations which are set out for you on page 12 of the policy paper. And do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much. It's now open for debate. Alan, you have your hand up first.
Yes, thank you very much, Kay. I'm very pleased to see this paper here, and thank you to Kaj and the team for the work that they're doing on this. It's really important that we have some certainty around our procurement practices, and that we are clear and that we have assurances that in our procurement that we don't have anyone working under conditions of modern slavery. Now, we know as an organisation we ourselves don't. We also assume that most of our major contractors, if not all of them, don't. But right the way down the procurement line, we don't necessarily have sight of who else is working and delivering a service on behalf of this council, or working on behalf of people who are contracted to provide services to this council. And it's really important, therefore, that we have this charter, that we sign up to that, and not only that, that we actively pursue it and ensure that we are auditing these activities, and that it's not just a charter gathering dust on a shelf. I don't always give credit to this government, and there's a great deal I can criticise them for, but I do give credit to the fact that they take modern slavery very seriously. The Modern Slavery Act has been continually changed and updated as the people, the criminal gangs who trade in people and are responsible for the growth of modern slavery, and sadly it is growing. And these criminal gangs get smarter, they get cleverer, they get better organised, and it's important, therefore, that all of our legislation keeps up with that, and that we are tackling them and challenging them and disrupting their activities in an effective way. So I'm really pleased to see this paper, Chair, and I'm very pleased that the council has brought this paper forward, and we will be supporting it.
Thank you, and I can only agree with you. This is a really important issue which we need to grapple with all the time. I now have Richard Butler and then Chris Barnfather. So Richard.
Thank you, Leader. Well, obviously I'm speaking full support of this report and paper. It goes without saying, but in general, I mean, isn't it a terrible shame that in this day and age we even have to talk about modern slavery? It's a relatively new term, but as we've discussed at previous meetings, where indeed when the motion was carried last year for this, we perhaps don't know it's going on. But it is, and we read and hear about it in the news every now and again. So as a lead employer and the lead local authority for Nottinghamshire, we are, I think, setting a very good example here to show other organisations, large and small across the county, that they will take this whole problem and worry about modern slavery seriously, and perhaps gives them an opportunity and thought for them to, for other organisations to bring in their own policies as well, because it's plainly going on, and it's, as we say, it's not always obvious. But between us, if large organisations like us and others can start bringing in serious policies with regards to their own employment and procurement procedures, then this has got to be welcomed. And let's hope that between us all, we, before we're all a lot older, try and knock this awful behaviour in place and just get rid of it, because it's truly awful that this is happening in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Chris, and then I've got Glyn Guilfoyle. So, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I concur with everything that's been said by Alan and Richard. It's an abhorrent practice, and I think it's a practice that so many people are unaware of as existing in modern day, British society, and yet it's within the last 20 years that there was a murder linked to modern day slavery within my own division. It occurs, unfortunately, all too frequently. It occurs in many areas. People, if you get them to focus and think about it, might talk about labourers perhaps on agricultural sites. They may talk about nail salons, which is something which has been topical lately. But it's actually insidious, and it's in many elements of society that people would just not be able to comprehend. And I speak from my own policing experience, even though that is now some time ago. So I'm absolutely delighted to see the paper that's before us today. It's vitally important that us, as a Tier 1 authority, a major employer, as Richard has already said, that we should be showing leadership by example here. And the fact that we are keeping this in the public's mind eye, we're ensuring not only that us as an organisation, but any organisation with which we are associated through our procurement policies, through our supply chains, adheres to the legislation, and not just the spirit of the legislation, but every aspect of the legislation, to ensure that we are doing everything that we can as a leading authority to ensure that we can do our best to try and stamp out this vile practice. So obviously we'll be supporting the paper before us today, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And now Glyn, please, and then I have Bruce.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I fully support the paper. The only issue, questions I've got is in relation to the process as we look at it today before us. Does look like a little bit of a tick box in the sense of the way that it's been dealt with, and I just wondered. It does say within the report about doing other things, and I just wondered if we could have an explanation about some of the more proactive things that we can do. Some of the visits that we can do, and the other one, as Councillor Barnfather says, about people being unaware, and I think what we ought to be doing as a leading education authority is educate to eradicate. And I think that is a big part we could do more about informing people. I mean, this week there was a gentleman reported in the I think in the Evening Post, it was on TV, I saw it, who had taken somebody in and was making them work. Told them that the money that they were getting was because was not very much, was because the tax was taking everything off them. But basically, he'd got him working in a factory as a modern day slavery, and the gentleman, I believe, got 3 years for that. And that was happening. That's happening now in Nottinghamshire, and that was a case before the court today. So I think that education bit is very important, and I think we ought to try and do a little bit more around that. But also, as I say, what sort of apart from asking, saying to people, tick this box and prove that you've signed up to it. because as you know, we've seen national supply chains, whether it be, and I hate to name them because I might get the wrong one, but household names, for instance, that have had goods made abroad, and they've all been made under slave conditions, and wages and everything else not being paid. Now, and most of them, I'm sure, will have got the charter and will have ticked it. But what they've not done is actually check the process through. And sometimes that's not by a tick box, that's actually by visiting them and looking around at the factories that the people are working in, and talking to the people that work in those and finding out about the conditions. Now, I know that can be an onerous task for us as a county authority, but I think we could work with our other county colleagues on this, and if there are places that we get services provided from in Derbyshire, we could ask Derbyshire to double check it, and we could do vice versa for them, because it is growing, and it's growing because people realise they can get away with it, and one of those reasons is possibly that it's just a tick box that we've got, and I know trading standards do quite a bit, and I know they've actually reported and successfully people have been arrested when trading standards are involved. But I'm just thinking if there's more that we can do.
I think you're quite right. It shouldn't be a tick box exercise. It should be a real exercise to try and eradicate it in our supply chains. I'm going to add Kaj Gatara, one of the officers, to come in. Kaj, do you have anything information from us on how we check up on what's happening in our supply lines?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we do. I mean, alongside our regular contract review meetings, we would also do quality visits. So you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, within a COVID environment at the moment, a lot of that, we've had to kind of revise some of that. But particularly within adult social care, we would also do spontaneous visits. So often we won't tell the provider we're coming. We will let them know that that is part of the routine, and we will just visit to make sure that those sorts of checks are happening. But you're absolutely right, and we can include that as part of our processes to strengthen that across the board.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That answers your question, Glyn.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I now have Bruce, then Roger Jackson, then Kate and Muriel. So Bruce.
Yeah, and interestingly, there's new legislation just going through on coercive control, and modern slavery is a type of coercive control. I won't repeat what other members have said, but just in addition, really, I think the COVID-19 crisis has exposed areas where we've got multiple occupancy across Nottinghamshire, and as night follows day, where we do have large numbers of people living in accommodation which is not fit for purpose. The likelihood is there may be an element of modern slavery within that, and we need to keep an eye out on that on that particular issue. It's also, we need to be looking at to ensure that gangmasters as well are properly controlled, because that is an ideal opportunity. We've just got to look for those areas where there is an opportunity for modern slavery to proliferate, and then deal with those areas as best we possibly can and as proactively as we can. So thank you, Kaj, for the paper, and I will be supporting it today.
Thank you very much. Right, Roger.
Thank you, Kay. Yeah, well, just basically to support what everybody else has said, and I totally agree. I fear that probably this is more widespread than we actually know, and which is a real problem. And Glyn brought up the points about what happens now abroad, and I think different cultures have different ideas about slavery and how they do use their people in their own country, and we should lead by example, and our example should go forward, not just in this country but other countries as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Right, Kate, please.
Thank you, Kay. Yes, and yes, clearly we must support this, and thanks to Kaj and the team for doing the brilliant work. Just one thing, this might be for a different report, because I do understand that this is about procurement, but I just wonder, especially kind of relating to what Alan was saying earlier, the picture's clearly changed. It used to be all about car washes and nail bars, didn't it? And we're all made aware, and there was even an app I think you could use for the public to use to check whether or not it was a bona fide kind of type setup. I just wonder to what extent we need to raise public awareness to watch for the signs and explain to them that actually the picture's changed, modern slavery is changing, you know, the criminals are using different methods. To what extent we need to get that message out there to people to be watching out for it. And just a really kind of pedantic thing as well, I think under 2, the date's wrong for the motion. It was 2020.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, that felt a bit picky, that did, but to just sort of point it out.
That's helpful, Kate. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring in Muriel now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I support the paper completely, and in fact, my point is similar to Kate's. I'm just wondering what the communications strategy is. I know this is about our procurement, but I suppose it's about what the strategy for communication is to all our linked providers and so on, but also to the wider community, because I think my impression is that there was quite a lot of buzz about this at one stage, particularly about car washes and nail bars, but it seems to have gone quiet. And I just wonder, Raj, what the strategy is at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you remember, we had a meeting with the police who gave us a lot of information.
Yeah.
And of course, this paper is particularly about what we're doing through our council and following our supply lines and the supply lines of the people round about us who give services. Chief Executive, I wonder if you could give any further insight to what the County Council is doing for this matter, because of course it is a police matter as well. So Chief Executive.
Thank you, Leader. Very happy to. So as well as the combined efforts of colleagues in procurement and trading standards who are at the front line of protecting us against modern slavery in our supply chain, but also out in our communities, it may be time to refresh our communications approach, Muriel. I think that's a good idea. So offline, we'll talk to Luke and colleagues in the communications service, get some information from CAG, from our trading standards colleagues, check that we've got the latest with our police colleagues, and then perhaps pull together a campaign so that we can raise public awareness again.
Thank you.
Alan, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come back? This is an unusual occurrence, remember.
Only to be helpful, if I may, Kay. I mean, I know that there's a lot of very good work happening in Nottinghamshire, and you know, the county council, the police, and other partners take it very seriously. There's a modern slavery partnership that meets on a regular basis. There's some good work being done, but I do agree that public perception and the public's knowledge of this unusual issue in many ways, and I'd take the point that Richard made, that it's unbelievable that we're even having these conversations in the 21st century in the UK, but we are, and that's the unfortunate thing. So I'm pleased to hear what Anthony's just said about looking again at our communications and the work that we might do as a lead authority in this area. To improve people's knowledge of modern slavery and how they can spot it and report it and be aware of it.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Do I have any more speakers, please, before I bring the seconder in? No. So, Reg, you seconded this. Would you like to come in now?
A lot of good things said there. I think, and what has been said, what do we need to focus on and the supply chains that we have. Further down the supply chains, you can find what you don't like going on. I mean, if you just take an example in Leicester, you know, the textile industry, what has been going on there, and if we were taking something from Leicester, from those supply chains, if you take it from, I don't know, Lincolnshire, they're picking fruit, and if we're sort of, that's feeding into our situation, you know, and you could go through a whole lot of these in the checklist and have a look at each one and just say to yourself, in my supply chain, environmentally, is this done correctly, or is it not done in the way we would expect it to do it? And as we used to do, I mean, I've done this myself, when we used to travel abroad to source, you would go into the back room and really see what was going on to make sure that the product that you were bringing from that organisation was delivered in the proper environment or the right environmental standards. So it can add up to a lot of work to ensure, because there is bad practice out there, and it's finding it and sourcing and ensure we don't source products from that bad practice.
I mean, the general consensus around the table today is that we are all in agreement that this something is unusual. Talking about it in the 21st century seems very odd, but it is there. It is in our society. And I think it's quite right that we are going to have more publicity about this and make sure our supply chains also understand that modern slavery could be in their company unless we're all of us vigilant. So I think we're quite right to do this. And I welcome the recommendation of the Chief Executive that we have some publicity around this through our own publicity department. So I'm now going to move to the vote. And I'd like you to remember this is what we're voting on. That we recognise the work undertaken on the Council's good practice on modern slavery and contract management. That's 1. 2, supports the actions outlined in the report to develop a consistent approach to the assurance against the Council's modern slavery values. That's 2. 3, considers any additional information members would like to receive, which I think we made clear today. And in order to make the voting clearer, I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to read out members' names alphabetically for the agenda item in order for them to confirm their voting. So I'm going to pass it now to the Chief Executive. Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. Starting then with Councillor Adair, please.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Vice.
4.
So amongst the members present, Chair, that's unanimous.
Put my microphone back on. Thank you, members, for that, and thank you for your support for the agenda item. We're now going to move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the UK Community Renewal and Levelling Up Funds, which is, of course, is fairly complicated. This report offers details of the 2 major funds announced in the recent budget, the UK Community Renewal and Levelling Up Funds, and the report confirms that the broad criteria sets out the expectations placed on the Council, as well as the opportunity to bid for both by the 18th of June 2021. So there's absolutely no pressure on at all. The UK Community Renewal Fund requires the Council to manage the process, to deliver a bid to government comprising a range of local projects supporting investment in skills, local businesses, local priority communities, and to support people into employment. This fund is principally revenue-based and prioritises bids that target the 100 priority places in Great Britain. In Nottinghamshire, these are Bassetlaw, Mansfield, and Newark and Sherwood. The Levelling Up Fund is a capital fund, with the first round being opened for applications directly to government that targets the themes of highways and transport, place-based regeneration and cultural. Applications for funding can be made by the districts for place-based regeneration and cultural themes. Applications for funding for the highways and transport theme need to be either supported or submitted by this Council as the Highways Authority. The recommendations propose firstly that this Council welcomes the opportunity to manage the call for projects and to develop the bid to government under the Community Renewal Fund, and secondly that the Council explores whether this first round call for projects under the Levelling Up Fund allows for specific highways and transport projects to develop for the submission. And of course, we have an election, and so time is going to be very short in order to get these to government. But get to government, we need to do that. So I formally remove the recommendations as set out on page 16 of our committee papers today. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second that and reserve my right.
Thank you very much, Reg. Right, would you put your hands up for those who'd like to speak on this? Bruce Lawton.
Just 1 second, I'll be with you in a second to get the camera's not working for some. Oh, here we go. Yeah, just very quickly, really. I think it's a shame, really, that the Ashfield Independents can't even be bothered to turn up to this policy meeting when this important paper comes in front of this council. particularly when Ashfield is in category 2, when you would have automatically assumed that it fitted along with Bassetlaw, Mansfield and Newark and Sherwood in category 1. And if they had been there here, they may well have been able to argue their case to be moved up the chain. I think it's a bit of a ridiculous decision, but there we go. It is what it is. But that's what you're here for as an elected representative, to be able to support the communities that put you in place, not just try and hoover up as many of their votes as you possibly can, and just shows you what we're up against with them. I make that point, but no, I think this is good news. This is about disseminating funding back down to local government. I'm all for it. I must admit I was not against, but disagreed with the formation of the LEP. I felt it was far too controlled by large multinational companies or large companies, and this will allow councils to be able to gain control over where the funding goes, because we know best, and therefore I look forward to the bids coming in. I know there's quite a number of bids coming in, well, that were working bids in Newark and Sherwood area. But it's like all these things, unless you've got shovel-ready cases, it's very difficult to get the bids in time in place to be able to receive the funding. So I make a plea that we continue to go down the route we are doing, to ensure that schemes are in place for us to be able to take advantage of these government schemes when they're made available. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Bruce. Right, I've got Roger Jackson next and then Muriel. So Roger.
Thank you, Kay. Yeah, I mean, all money from government is greatly received, and we should spend it wherever we can and make good use of it. I mean, I think this moment in time, help for local businesses is very much needed after they've just had a very difficult time over the last year or so, and and a kickstart in the right direction for them to be able to get the business back up and running again, and money for skills for teaching young people, because a lot of education has been lost over the last period of time, and anything we can do to get people back into work, say after these difficult times, is very much appreciated, and we should spend it wisely and wherever we can and obtain wherever we can. I mean, the Levelling Up Fund is basically a capital fund of government's offering us money. We should take it wherever we can and spend it wise, as Bruce said. As long as we've got some good projects there, we should try and obtain that money to go forward and spend it.
Yeah, agree with that. So Muriel, please, and then I've got Philip Owen. So Muriel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just to try and get a kind of a handle on how this works out at a local level. So the example I would bring, it isn't a major infrastructure project, but it's the issue about how the site on which Gedling School did exist can be used for the future. There's a very large area of green, obviously playing fields that were part of the school grounds. It's quite close to the Gedling Country Park, but actually separated by the Gar, so people don't necessarily go across to the other green area very easily. So we've got a very significant space in a resource-deprived community without any kind of leisure facilities at all, an area of dense housing, an ex-mining neighbourhood, and the discussions about how that can be developed has stalled. So the plan from the local community group, which is a very lively one, isn't actually shovel ready, but there's certainly a very strong vision of how the area could be used for sports facilities and community facilities. And I think the issue is stalling over the very reasonable arguments, I suppose, from the county about an income from some house building and the balance of house building with protecting the green area and putting sporting resources in. It just seems to me that this fund, which is claiming to to uplift communities is ideal in principle. And I just wondered if a project like this would stand any chance in being developed over the next few months to bring in some serious money.
Well, as you say, Muriel, this is a county council asset and it's for another administration. Bearing in mind, this is the last policy meeting of this 4 years administration. So I think that's a decision for the future, but thank you for your contribution. I now have Philip Owen and then Bin Guilfoyle.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Whilst the prospect of more money coming in to be spent in communities is always welcome, I'm just a little concerned about how the coordination of this is going to take place. My understanding is, and I may be wrong and I stand to be corrected, but my understanding is that each member of Parliament is required to be on board for a particular scheme in their area. And of course, my MP is Darren Henry, and I've been talking to him about a possible bid around Kimberley, and he seems quite keen on that. But it seems to me that the actual bidding process, and again I stand to be corrected, the actual bidding process is going to be really driven by the district councils, who really tend to look rather more at small-time projects. But I note from the report in paragraph 13 that the county council is invited to make one transport submission. Now, I can't see how making one transport submission across the county is going to tie in with the individual bids from the districts supported by the members of Parliament. And in reality, the transport side of things is much more likely to be soaking up significant amounts of money. For example, in Kimberley, things that are being thrown around are moving of bus stops, which to improve traffic flow and that sort of thing, which are, because of the current locations, would be extremely expensive. But this would be an opportunity, perhaps. Another thing is a further access onto the A610, or the possibility of screening the A610 as far as noise creation is concerned at the moment, because houses have been built fairly close to it. Now, all this sort of thing is going to be, or would be, quite expensive, but it's not necessarily the sort of thing that the county council might be thinking about in its holistic bid across the county. So I'm very concerned that we will fall between two stools and not really get what a particular community necessarily wants. So I would like a fair degree of reassurance that, say, a bid based on Kimberley would have all the elements into it that are required. And how we're going to do that by the 18th of June, I'm at a loss, because that really is a very, very short time scale. So thank you, Leader, for that.
Yes, I'm going to bring our officers in a moment who can perhaps answer that, maybe Matthew or Derek. Before I do, I need to tell you I've got the hands of Bin Guilfoyle, Mike Pringle and Alan Rhodes, and of course we have the seconder to speak as well. So now, Matthew, do you have any information on how we're going to manage this process, or?
Chair, thank you. Yes, so just in answer to Councillor Owen, we will be reviewing a number of areas in terms of the transport and highways activity. We are in contact with our colleagues at the district level to review some of their priorities, and the plan would be, as obviously as part of the process going forward, that we would bring back a selection of options for this committee to approve to move forward. So that's the plan, and that's as we set it out in the paper. However, clearly it is difficult to pull all of that together within the time frame, but we are in contact with colleagues to do just that.
So I think we're trying our best. I think that's the answer. Right, Glyn now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I share Councillor Owen's concerns, and also some of the concerns I've got around timescales and deliverability of the projects, and will there be any penalties? In fact, if timescales aren't met, because that could be, something that, well, we want it done by this date and we can't achieve it for all sorts of things. Those factors may not be within the control of the project leads. I just wanted to put one idea that I've put before when this paper, when it first came out. I spoke on it at Communities and Place Committee, and it obviously, selfishly, it is a Bassett Law issue, and it's been a major issue for years, and it's Victoria Square in Worksop and getting over the bridge around Bridge Place into Worksop itself. The tailback of traffic at times right up to the railway crossing at one end and on Gateford Road at the other, right back up to Babbage Way, can sometimes take you 15 minutes to get into the town centre. And that is a big problem because it can only take you 15 minutes to get to Meadowhall. And people from the new estates that have been built in Worksop up on Gateford, obviously they've got a choice. They turn left for Meadowhall, or they turn right for Worksop and get in a queue and sit 15 minutes, or drive 15 minutes and get to Meadowhall. And that's the choice that they make. They go to Meadowhall. And that is why a lot of the time we're seeing our town centre collapse around us. And there's very little that we can do. But clearly, one of the main issues is better access. And if we could do something around that area, whether it's a bridge, whether it's widening the existing bridge or whatever in that area, that would make a great difference to the town centre. So again, the difficulty is, the timescale of what we've had dropped on us, that you've got to have your bids in by this time, and it's got to be delivered by that time, which to me is really putting a lot of pressure on officers. And as I say, I've got big concerns about deliverability.
And what you suggest are significant engineering solutions which are not done quickly. They take a length of time, and I can only agree with you. Around Nottinghamshire, I know of several significant engineering projects which should take place, require significant amounts of money and even longer lead-in time than we have at the present time. But as Philip Owens already said, we have money on offer, and we have to do the best that we can get it down so it's not frittered away, but spent properly on things that will improve matters. So I can only agree with you, Glyn, in many ways. I've now got Mike Pringle and then Alan Rhodes. So Mike next.
Thanks, Leader. I must say, initially I had a right titter to myself when the suggestion of levelling up at the timescale that were being offered was something that I found a stretch of any design and implementation, to be quite honest. However, obviously, reading the paper again, the penny dropped. The government have actually taken note of the plans that were pinned up in the Transport Minister's office, and obviously the feasibility study that was carried out by the Labour group, which was an open invitation, to be quite honest, the feasibility study on the Robin Hood line, which is ready to go. It can be done within this time. It will benefit 35,000 people immediately. It will take cars off the road, so it will impact our highways in a positive way. So I absolutely applaud it. Thank you so much. I think paragraph 11 and paragraph 13 tick every box in the implementation and moving forward of the Robin Hood line. So thank you, Matthew. Really, really appreciate your efforts on this. I'm sure you'll drive this forward for us. And I think it's a great way to end a four-year administration. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mike. And now Alan.
I'm a great admirer of Mike's optimism and positive nature. But I find myself in a very rare situation where Philip, Owen and I are actually in agreement. I'm concerned about the process. Philip rightly expressed concern about the process. I'm concerned about it before because it's unrealistic in some respects to deliver a project that will actually make a big difference, that a project that may be, and I'm using the figures on here, typically up to £20 million within the timescale that's being put before us, which is clearly to meet the next general election, 31st of March 2024. That'll probably be the date of Purdah. And so, but we've been here before. Actually, when I was leader of the council, I regularly railed against this ridiculously tight timescale that Whitehall regularly put on us to deliver projects to achieve government funding. It's unfair, for a project to achieve to put in the funding application, to get the approval, to get planning permission, for the design and delivery of a project that may or may not cost up to £20 million takes time. It takes a lot of time. And I hate this term shovel ready because, frankly, there aren't that many local authorities with projects waiting for funding actually on the drawing board, waiting for funding. It doesn't work like that. We all know it doesn't. And I think, therefore, there's a level of the government and Whitehall being disingenuous about this so-called levelling up funding. I mean, any funding that can be brought into our area has got to be welcomed. We all know that over the past 10 or 11 years or so, we have been underfunded. We have missed out on the funding that other areas have got. It's a known fact, and there are plenty of statistics to bear it out, which we've all seen in the past. So we have to welcome that. But why wait until now? Why put this ridiculously tight deadline on to have a bid submitted by the 18th of June, with all of the other caveats that are put into that bid around the support of the members of the Parliament, working with other local authorities, all of that. By the 18th of June, it's really, really tight. So I've got sympathy with our officers because they're put under enormous pressure by these ridiculous and spurious deadlines. But I question whether or not this is genuine levelling up or window dressing. And my concern is that it is the latter, because to be able to deliver a project of this magnitude that is going to make a real difference in our communities in such a tight timescale is a virtual impossibility, and it's an opportunity missed as far as I'm concerned, both for this council and for your government.
Thank you. And I now have John Peck. So John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the first, or certainly one of the first contributions I made to this county council 8.5 years ago when I arrived was to speak up for the Robin Hood line. So it might be appropriate for me to make my last contribution by supporting my neighbouring colleague, Councillor Pringle, in his comments about the Robin Hood line. He might have made them slightly tongue-in-cheek, but there's a serious point to it, because whilst Alan might not like the term shovel-ready, the Robin Hood line is a transport programme which is virtually shovel-ready. The line is still in regular use because there are trains going up there quite regularly to the test track. In Edwinstowe, we have a beautiful Victorian station built in 1896, which is already there. It's ready, waiting to be occupied. Needs a bit of work on the platform, but you would be getting a transport solution for our area at what is, in transport terms, in railway terms, rock bottom prices. You can't. There are schemes like this that have been happening around the country, but not at the cost that this would be. It would be rock bottom price for a railway scheme, and so there you have it. One that's ready, waiting to go. Whilst I have some doubts about the term levelling up, this is something that really would make a difference to our part of the county. And I think it's something that has cross-party support and has had for a long time. I do remember our MP, Mark Spencer, prior to the 2015 general election, when he thought he was still fighting a marginal seat, put out a press release saying he'd already got the money for the Robin Hood line. Councillor Lawton will remember that because he was attending as a substitute at the Highways Committee, and he repeated that false claim prior to the 2015 general election. I had to correct him as I was on that committee at that time. So there have been various claims made about the Robin Hood line. They haven't come to fruition yet. Here we have an opportunity where I think that should be our #1 priority, and we could put in a bid for that quite easily by June. So there you go. That's my last contribution. I'm speaking up for the Robin Hood line and my division.
Thank you, John. I'm actually a veteran of the Robin Hood line. I was there all the way along when the first stage was opened to Mansfield, and then the second stage to Whitwell, and that, of course, was under a Tory administration. So the Robin Hood line has been its first achievement, and that was a significant achievement at the time because we had to dig the spoil out of the tunnel at Kirkby. But so I can remember, I know that every inch of that line because I visited every inch of it years and years ago when I was leader of the opposition. But we now move on because this isn't about the Robin Hood line. This is about these levelling up funds we can get in the Community Renewal Fund. So whilst you made a very good pitch for one of them, it actually is across the council, across the county, and that's why we need to consider all of them. And I think that has been said several times, the timescale is very tight, but we should not miss an opportunity to draw down funding for Nottinghamshire. I think it's really important that those things that we need to be done, we collaborate together. But you all do make a perfect case out, might I say, for unitary authorities, devolved funding, less interference from central government. All of these are perfect cases for the future going forwards. I truly believe if we were devolved funding to a council, we would probably spend it very well because despite our political differences, I think when the push comes to shove, where all of us can get behind a scheme which has universal benefit for everybody. And therefore, I think we just keep pressing on with the agenda with government. Don't try and control us from Whitehall. We actually do know best because we've been elected to serve this area. But I will get off my soapbox now. And I'll ask if there are any more speakers before I bring Reg in. No? So, Councillor Adair, Reg.
Yeah, thank you, Kay. I mean, a lot has been said. I think this paper here, both funds are there for us to go and get what we can. We're coming out of COVID. We've got a lot of things that we will need to do. A lot of people will need help, and there is funding there for us to, as councils, both district and county, to make our representation to government for funds, for skills, for businesses and communities, and for transport. So I just think what we've got to do is get our heads down. Don't worry about the time frames. They said June. Let's get after it. Let's get it done. Let's do it by June and get on with it and get the funding for Nottinghamshire.
Agree with you, Reg. So now we'll move to the vote, and what we're voting on is this. The Council undertakes the UK Community Renewal Fund lead council role as set out by government. Council officers work with the appropriate partners to prepare and accept potential projects for the UK Community Renewal Fund for inclusion within a bid for government for consideration at the next Policy Committee meeting. Should the UK Community Renewal Fund bid to government be successful, the Council receives and distributes the grant funding in accordance with the government's guidance. And finally, number 4, the Council officers work with Tier 1 District Council colleagues to develop and seek support for any appropriate potential levelling up funding transport, highways bids for consideration at the next Policy Committee meeting. So they're the things we're voting on today. And I'm now going to ask the Chief Executive, please, to call out the names so we can record our votes. So, Anthony, please.
Thank you, Councillor Cutts. Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
Sorry, 4.
And Councillor Weiss.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. We'll now move on then to agenda item 6, which is the operational decisions that would take. It's a quarterly update, and this is December 2020 to February 2021. This report seeks to update members on operational decisions taken. As the committee will be aware, I've agreed that the list of day-to-day operational decisions can be taken by the Service Director, subject to the consultation with the Chairman of the Policy Committee being consulted and determining whether the operational decisions should be reported to committee. A report of those decisions is then reported to the committee with an annual review, and the decisions made in the period are listed within the report, and it's recommended that these shall be noted. Does anyone want to make any comments about this? Before I open it for debate, I'll ask if there are any seconders, please.
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much, Reg. Members, any of the updates you wish to comment on? No, I think they're all pretty well self-explanatory and set out for everyone there to see. So thank you very much for that. Reg, do you wish to come in? And you've reserved your right to. Do I have any? There aren't any speakers, are there? Reg, would you like to come in then now and say anything? You've reserved the right.
I've got nothing further to add. It's all in the notes.
Well, I recommend we now move to the votes then, please. So, Chief Executive, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner. Councillor Steve Garner. I'll come back to you, Steve. Councillor Guilfoyle.
4.
Councillor I beg your pardon. Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Weiss.
4.
Can I come back to Steve Garner, please? In any case, it's carried, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. It must have dropped out the call. So thank you, members. That's unanimous. Now, the final item on the agenda today is the work programme. It's set out there for you in detail. Bearing in mind this is a new, with the end of this administration, a new administration will start. I'm sure the work programme, which is a lively document, is subject to change or additions. But is there anything anyone wants to see added onto it today, apart from the things down here already? No, I think we've got our work cut out. So June's going to be a very busy meeting, so.
Got to get by the 6th of May first.
Well, that leads me neatly into saying thank you very much all for your call today, and thank you for being on here. Thank you for being good companions over the last 4 years. This is my last meeting with the County Council, and I look forward to seeing you all at some future date in some future place. Perhaps less adversarial, but if it's going to be adversarial, then so be it. But nice, thank you very much all for your attention today. And may I wish you all well in the elections, but some groups, like the Conservative group, just weller than others. Thank you very much, and see you sometime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.